Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, December 16th, 2024. I'd ask that everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Backins? Here. Mr. Brotto? Here. Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Olgiati? Here. Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. Witt? Here. Mr. Verkast?
Here. Thank you. Next is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of November 25th, 2024, approval of the workshop meeting minutes of December 9th, 2024, approval of the bills in the amount of $2,318,155.10, approval of the 2025 annual meeting calendar, a motion to renew the contract with the Huron-Clinton Metropolitan Authority for path maintenance services, approval of the 2024 year-end budget amendments, and a KCI postage check request for assessing. Unless there is any discussion, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Batkins. Is there support? Support. All right. Discussion. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, there was a discussion that the individual associated with item G1 asked that we might remove item G1 from tonight's agenda. So I would be looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda with the removal of item G1.
I'll make that motion. Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Brotto with support by Mr. Tominello. Good? All right, discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, next is announcements. I do have some announcements, and others may also have announcements. Metro Park passes are available at the treasurer's office. They are $35 for residents, $24 for seniors 62 and older. The treasurer's office can help you if you have additional questions. Tomorrow is the last day to donate to the Harrison Township Firefighters IAFF 1737 virtual giving tree. Please help them reach their goal of $5,000 to help Harrison Township families celebrate Christmas. I was recently contacted by a former citizen, Gordon Farhat. He does many charitable things and asks for support sometimes on some of our social media pages in the township. He asked me to thank all of the residents of Harrison Township for their generosity. He shared with me some stories both from people who were helped as well as very generous acts by some of our residents. So thank you to everyone in our township who took the time in 2024 to help a neighbor or donate their time or donate their treasures for the benefit of someone else. A reminder that the township offices will be closed December 23rd through January 1st for the Christmas holiday. We will reopen on Thursday, January 2nd with our normal business hours. For more information on these, as well as all other township events, you can call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. Visit our website, harrisontownshipmi.gov, or follow us on Twitter or X at harrisontwpmi. And then finally, today's meeting is our last board meeting of 2024. I would like to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday and a Merry Christmas. Any other announcements? I thought you might want to say tax bills went out.
We're already getting tax bills in.
Okay, good.
They went out actually before December 1st.
I was just trying to wish everyone a Merry Christmas while you talked about taxes, so.
Yeah. Boring taxes.
Yeah. Okay. Next on the agenda, item D1 from the fire department. Let me find that. budget? That's budget amendments.
Page 8.
Thank you. All right. Regarding emergency networking software, board members, we are requesting approval to switch from New World Fire Report software to emergency networking fire report software, cloud-based. Both software packages are products of Tyler Technology, and Macomb County Sheriff Dispatch is the primary account manager. We expect a cost savings of approximately $20,000 annually by switching to the cloud-based emergency networking. Emergency networking will also be able to support the new National Fire Reporting System going into place in 2025. We ask that you approve changing our software services from New World to emergency networking. Included in the board packet is the quote showing the startup costs and annual fee. The cost is projected to be $27.50, and the proposed motion is to approve the switch to emergency networking fire report software, cloud-based, in the amount of $2,750 for 2025.
I'll make that motion.
All right, support.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Batkins with support by Mrs. Brown. Any discussion on the motion?
Spend $2,700 to save 20?
Seems like a good idea. Yeah. I'm no accountant, but.
Well,
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda is an item, E1 from the Finance Department. Mr. Witt?
Yes, so the township is required annually to adopt a budget. And in order to do that, we were required to hold a public hearing. We noticed the public hearing in advance in the Journal as required under the law. So we're here to hear comments from residents on the proposed budget, so we would need a motion to open the public hearing, and then a motion to close the public hearing when we're done.
I'd be looking for a motion to open the public hearing regarding our 2025 budget at 7:11 PM.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Brado. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, does this require
Yes, sir.
require a roll call? Thank you.
Mr. Olgiati?
yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. All right, at this time, if anyone wishes to make any public comments regarding our 2025 budget, we would accept those public comments now. Hearing no public comments, be entertaining a motion to close the public hearing regarding our 2025 budget at 7:12 PM.
Make a motion to close the public hearing at 7:12.
Is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Brado to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Next on our agenda is item E2 regarding the adoption of our 2025 budget.
So this is the actual adoption of our budget, so we would just need a motion to adopt the budget as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Batkins with support by Mr. Olgiati. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, this does not.
It does,
Okay,
yes, sir.
good.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Thank you, Board. Next, item F1, a resolution regarding the CDU agreement to the Oakland-Macomb Intercounty Drain Board Bond. Mr. Witt?
So as part of the process for issuing additional bonds for the Oakland-Macomb Intercounty Drain, or OMID, the township is required to adopt the attached continuing disclosure undertaking resolution. This is a very similar resolution to what the township adopted last year for the 2023 OMID bond issue. Because the township is above 10% of the bond issue, we must include the township's information in the official statement and do annual disclosures, so it's not anything different than what we're already doing. So there's no additional requirements because we're already having to do this since our last bond. So we would just be looking for a motion to adopt the continuing disclosure undertaking resolution as presented.
Motion?
Motion by Mrs. Brown, is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Olgiati. Good. Any discussion or questions, any issues?
I just have one question
Yeah.
on page 102.
Okay.
There's a total in the amount of $3,340,000. Is that the 10%? What is that?
340.
Right at the top.
In the header for the exhibit, yep.
Yeah, Exhibit A.
Yep. So, page 102, has, Exhibit A says Harrison Charter Township, County Macomb,
Oh,
3.340, or 3,340,000,
yes,
right?
What is that?
that's
number?
the amount of the bond.
That's the 10%. That's the amount of the.
That's our share. I believe.
Just looked like it was dropped in there. Really doesn't have a.
Just because every time it's a little bit different. You know what, Mr. Backins, I do not have the full schedule here. I can check with our finance director because she has what that amount is.
But I guess the point is it's 10%. Is that?
Well, no, some communities choose to pay cash as opposed to them being bonded and financed. So what happens is even, like, our share of OMID is not, I think we're just under 10% as a percentage of contribution to the drainage district. But when communities choose to pay cash, it increases our share of the bonding amount to raise us over that threshold where we have to do this continuing disclosure resolution and all the associated paperwork. So I assume that that's our full share specific to us, but I can confirm that.
Okay. That's really the only question I had.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Backins?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkast?
Yes. Thank you, Board. Skipping over item G1, we'll move forward to item G2. Our current supervisory contract with GELC does not allow for vacation time rollover unless mutually agreed upon. Early this year, we negotiated to allow the GELC General Employees Union to roll additional vacation time at the end of the year. I am proposing that we agree to allow the GELC Supervisory Union to roll up to 40 hours of vacation time from one year to the next. Per the contract, there is no payout of vacation time upon separation, so there isn't really any cost to this. The idea is that amongst our supervisory employees, the contract currently says if there's a need to roll over vacation, we can agree to it. It's sort of voluntary on the part of the township. Otherwise, within the managerial employees that are in this bargaining unit, it's use your vacation or lose it. And so the thought was that allowing them that opportunity to roll up to 40 hours from one year to the next kind of eliminates that feeling of, kind of that conflict of saying, well, I don't really want to lose vacation, but I don't really need to take a day off, but I'm taking one off because I don't want to lose this otherwise banked time. Really, the only way, and this would ultimately hurt us, is if an employee after 25 years of service were to roll an additional 40 hours from one year to the next upon, maybe they say I'm going to retire July 1st and they really stop working June 1st. So again, really, if somebody works their full time, maybe we could see a scenario where they might retire and leave some weeks before their actual last day of service, which I don't think is really unique or uncommon in a lot of employment situations. So for those reasons, I recommend that we allow the GELC Supervisory Union to roll up to 40 hours of vacation time from one year to the next.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Is there support?
Support.
All right. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item G3 regarding our part-time inspectors. Board members, we employ 3 part-time trades inspectors for electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. They're paid hourly with no fringe benefits other than, I believe the state requires currently 40 hours of sick time, and that's going to change in the near future. There is no policy or contract to assure that their wages are adjusted to reflect the cost of living. The 3 bargaining units are receiving a 3% increase for 2025, and the other part-time employees, and this was my error, I believe I had written that they were receiving a 2.7% increase for 2025. It was actually not 0.27, it was 0.31. The current hourly rate for our trades inspectors is $35.50 an hour. I'm proposing that we increase their hourly rate by $1 effective January 1st of 2025. A dollar is equal to about a 2.8% increase. So if you kind of look at the average amount of hours, it's about $3,000 annually. It's important to note that historically, all 3 of these positions, or at least maybe 2. Sometimes we did have people who were plumbing and mechanical dual certified. But historically, these were full-time employees with full benefits, pension, and health care. So switching to this part-time model, probably 15, 16 years ago, has allowed us to reduce our costs. And being that we're primarily a built-out community, it's hard to justify a full-time person. So we're contracting with folks who are typically retired from another municipality, and they're just working for the hourly rate, and I feel like they deserve the raise parallel or similar to what our other employees are receiving, even though these folks aren't in a bargaining unit.
So between these, are these electrical, mechanical, and plumbing inspectors 3 different people?
Yeah, three different individuals. We have a relationship where we do have pre-established regular hours for them. None of them work full-time, kind of based on the demand. So collectively, we're probably employing these 3 part-time individuals costs us less than 1 full-time trades inspector. So still a good bargain, but it's a competitive market. There aren't a lot of these trades inspectors out there. So first of all, I feel like we've got 3 good individuals doing this, but I also think that if everybody else is getting a raise and you're not, it kind of seems unfair, and I want to make sure that we treat them, treat them properly so that they, continue to fulfill the needs we have for these trades inspections.
I'll make the motion to increase their hourly rate by $1 for the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing inspector.
All right, is there support?
Support.
A motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Olgiati. Any discussion on the motion?
I don't think that $36.50 for the work that they do in the community is being overpaid whatsoever, and if that makes a little bit of goodwill, keeps them more secure in the position, I think that's a good deal. I think it's a good deal.
They're all experienced individuals, and if you were to look at what they might earn working in their trade, that might, in some cases, that could be low, and in a lot of cases, that would include benefits as well. So I agree that this is a reasonable rate to pay for part-time work. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, G4, opt-out of PA 152. Public Act 152 limits certain benefits for Michigan public employees. Townships may opt out of Public Act 152 annually. We have opted out of this legislation since it was first introduced over 10 years ago. I recommend that we opt out of PA 152 for 2025. Simply stated, back in that's probably 11 or 12, the state legislature, in an effort to control the state budget, said that healthcare costs for public employees statewide needed to be limited to a certain hard cap, a number established by the state treasurer annually, or every public employee could get 80% of their healthcare cost covered with 20% paid by the individual. And while I recognize and appreciate the effort at the state level, at the local level, we find that those healthcare benefits are an important part of an employee's compensation. We made a conscious decision back then to switch to a different healthcare plan that was more reasonable in cost, that shifted some co-pays to resident or to employees. But we didn't feel that paying some of your premium doesn't encourage consumerism. Paying some of your costs out of pocket makes you think twice. If you've got to pay the first $1,000, for example, of your healthcare costs, it makes you think twice about spending that from a savings account or maybe making another decision on healthcare costs. So we chose a different model. Because of that, we have opted out of this legislation probably 12 or 13 years. So my recommendation is to opt out of PA 152 for 2025.
I'll make the motion to opt out of PA 152 for 2025.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, when I went through these, I guess it's quotes from GRS.
Maybe
Different-
next one,
next item.
next one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, that's all right.
I usually look ahead.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Any other discussion or questions regarding PA 152? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, this does not require a roll call. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, GASB fee payments for 2025. Each year, our audit requires the preparation of several statements to satisfy government audit standards. Attached board packet are 3 cost proposals from Gabriel Roeder Smith, or GRS, our actuarial services provider. The employee pension, the fireman's pension, and our retiree health care trust boards all pay for their valuations, but the general fund has historically covered the cost for the preparation of these GASB, or Government Accounting Standard Board statements. Therefore, I recommend that we approve the preparation and payment of the 2025 GASB statements at a total cost of $34,250. Is there a motion, or are there questions or discussion?
I'll make the motion, then I got a question.
Okay. All right. Is there support?
Support.
All right. Got a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Witt. Mr. Badkins?
I see, this is the one I was talking about. See, the first page is a total of $10,750.
Yep.
The next one has a total of $17,750.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third, I guess, is the 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than the 34.
Yep. So what we're looking at is, let's go back to 124 is the first page that has a quote. For our, this is the OPEB, or Retiree Healthcare Board. So Other Post-Employment Benefits is the acronym, Other Post-Employment Benefits, OPEB. The law in Michigan requires that a pension fund has to have an annual valuation. In other words, annually, an approved audit, actuarial firm has to look at how did you perform, what are your liabilities, how well funded are you, what do you need to do in the coming year. The current laws in Michigan require that that's only done, it used to be, I think it used to be every 3 years. I believe it switched to 2 years, but regardless, our OPEB fund does not have a need for evaluation. So if you look, in 2024, we spent $13,800 on evaluation, right? That is an obligation of that OPEB fund. So they paid that, and last year I asked this board to pay the $10,550. For 2025, the OPEB fund is not required to perform evaluation, which saves them $13,800 plus whatever inflation is.
Yep.
But the accounting standards and auditing standards require that those items be done. So for this fund, one of 3 funds, I'm asking you for $10,750.
Yep.
We go to the next one, there's $12,000 that the employee pension fund has to pay, and $57.50 that needs funding. And then similarly, when we go to fire, there's a $11,200 valuation $5,750 for the GASB statement, and then individual statements are quoted at $3,050. So that, the difference is, when we look at those three funds, there isn't a valuation needed by law for the OPEB fund. And why do it if you don't have to do it? It doesn't change our balance, it doesn't change our funding level, we're not tapping into it, so that's the difference. Does that make sense?
The pension boards approve that one part of the cost, we approve the other, because that's the decision we've made. I've heard it done different ways.
Right.
But the problem is if we make the pension board pay for it, they're just gonna say, hey, give us $34,000 more, because we're short that now.
Correct. So if we look at, I don't know, let's just say we look at the employee pension proposal, that's page 126. So on page 126, the actuary last year charged the pension fund $11,800. In fairness, the pension fund chooses the actuary. They have to have that actual valuation. If we charged them, this year it's $12,000. If we said that the pension fund pays $5,750, it would deplete the pension fund by $5,750, and the actuary would say, well, you've got to contribute another $5,750 to get to the funding level you're supposed to be for 2025. So we have historically just paid that from the general fund. The pension fund does not need to have this audit performed. The Board of Trustees has to have it done. Within that umbrella, the pension fund falls in there, but we don't charge individually the police and the fire for their individual audit services.
Okay, so if I'm looking at this, maybe it's just been a long week already.
No, it's okay.
124, I got 8150 and 2600, that's part of this 36,000, correct?
Correct.
And then I go to page 126, 5750 is part of this
Correct.
34.
Yep.
Then I go to page, I'm assuming it's 128,
Yep.
and it's 8,800.
It's actually $5,750 because the individual benefit statements we don't have to pay for.
Okay, then that doesn't total the 34.
And that could be a math error on my part.
I hope it
57
is, because
Yeah.
I'm straining over here.
5750 twice? Yeah, I can see it already. I must have carried something twice at plus 10,750. So that's 51, 2, 1. I'm seeing 21,250.
That's funny, because that's what I'm seeing,
I agree with that.
so
I might propose that,
I'll revise my,
yeah, I don't know how I came up with 34,250. I got another 13,000 in there. I don't
that's
know.
why I was trying to find, that's why I need the explanation, so.
I fat fingered it. Yeah, well, I was just adding them up, but you're right, 21,250 is the amount, and that's all we would have paid.
Yeah,
but
I figured as much, but I'll
Nope.
make that motion.
All right, so we've got a revised motion by Mr. Batkins to authorize the payment of 21,250. Let me double check, make sure I didn't miss something. 50. That's correct. Yep. Continued support, Mr. Witt?
Of course.
All right, good. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, discussion. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item G6. One of our water and sewer field personnel recently resigned. We try to maintain that field personnel staffing at 8 field personnel. I would like to advertise and interview our leading candidates. We would bring a recommendation back to the board for hiring at a future meeting. The cost for posting this we tend to see that you post on one site and a lot of these other sites will kind of harvest that data and repost it. So the site we chose was $150. So we're looking for a motion to advertise and interview for the position of water and field utility worker 1 with a recommendation to come back to a future meeting.
Make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right. We've got a motion by Mr. Mr. Olgiati with support by Mrs. Brown. And while we're talking about it, this is really a great opportunity. Our water and field personnel are kind of uniquely positioned between some of the young folks that are pursuing a trade, because this is certainly a skilled trade position. But it's also, a lot of municipalities are recognizing that these are first responders. water and sewer services we consider to be essential. So these are not police and fire, but they are definitely on-call people that provide essential services to our residents. And we're talking about a skilled trade position with a lot of opportunity to advance within these ranks and make a good career choice. So we encourage young folks, or anybody, but specifically we seem to see a lot of young folks apply for these opening positions. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we've got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mrs. Brown. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item G7, regarding our waste hauler bidding. Our current waste hauler contract is set to expire May 1st, 2025. The current contract began May of 2015. It was originally a 5-year contract with a 5-year extension. During the COVID pandemic, this board did agree in early 2020 to extend the contract from 2020 to 2025. I am recommending that we solicit bids for our waste hauling services. We are currently paying a rate of $13.54 per month. It's one of the lowest rates in the Metro Detroit region. If you find a municipality that's less than that, it's pennies less than that. And it's because we're at the end of a 10-year contract. We've seen some of the bidding come in a lot higher. Recent bids in neighboring communities have come back in the $18 to $22 per month range. Some of the variation from one rate to another is based on how the service is billed and how the trash is collected. So I'll pause there. Some municipalities are hands-off and the service provider would bill the residents directly for the service. That's an extra chore for that service provider. So you'd say, okay, if I'm in municipality A and I just pick up the trash and send them one bill a month versus municipality B, where I not only pick up the trash, but I have to go through the collections process, I have to send out the bills, I have to follow up on people who don't pay, send them another notice, that builds some additional expenses. Because we already bill our residents quarterly for water, adding that additional cost drops our rate substantially, regardless of 15 years ago, 10 years ago, or moving forward. If you're a waste hauler, simply stated, you'd rather send one bill a month instead of 9,000. The other thing is how trash is collected. One Macomb County municipality recently switched from what they call a manual load to an automated load. So currently, you put trash out at the curb, it's picked up. One option is to have an automated load where a truck pulls up, one guy is inside the truck, he directs an arm to come out, you have to put your trash out in dumpsters, plastic dumpsters, they dump that dumpster, and they set it down. If you set a bag next to it, they'll leave it there, they're not gonna pick it up. That's a more efficient way to do it. It doesn't necessarily cater to every resident. It eliminates the need to have someone on the back of the truck for that manual load, and that person on the back of the truck is oftentimes one of those positions that might have more liability, workers' comp issues, things like that. So, a lot of different variables that we see in terms of how trash is picked up. And in our lifetimes, we've certainly seen it change a lot. I don't think we're gonna go out to bid and be anywhere close to $13.54 per month. We are anticipating that change. The lowest bid I could find was somewhere around $18 for 2025. So I don't know, and that's for, that was a city. Cities typically provide this as a part of your city service, so they pay the bill directly. So no matter what we do, we're gonna probably see an increase for this. But even if we came back with a $20 per month rate, that would still be cheaper than the rates we were paying in 2010 when we had multiple service providers. And back then, we had 3 trucks a week coming down your street, and the majority of those did not include all the services that we're currently getting. I recently met with our current waste hauler, Priority Waste, to discuss the various options. Currently, we receive chipping services at curbside, but that is not a service that at this point is kind of automatic. It's not available. Back in 2015, we did not include chipping in our request for quotes but at the time, Rizzo was the winning bidder, it's changed hands a couple times. They offered it at no additional cost, and they were 20% lower than anybody else. So how do you say no to quote-unquote free chipping services, right? I don't think, I haven't seen the new contracts coming in with chipping services. You can pay for anything you want, but that might be one that we may not be able to continue to offer.
Well, that's one of those services that very few people use.
Correct.
And it's only once a month anyway, and even then, very few residents really use that.
Right, the majority of residents not utilize it. The
So if you
difficult thing is having offered it for 10 years,
Yeah.
you take it
No,
away and
I-
folks are like, well, we used to get this, we used to get that, right?
I agree.
But the point is that we didn't ask for it. I feel like we got it free for 10 years, but I don't know that
Free
it,
is good.
right, yeah.
Free was good.
The number that our current provider gave me was about $10,000. They said 10,000 a week, but they typically do it 1 week. So you're talking about $10,000 a month. So, I mean, it's a discussion we can have. As I go further, I'll explain. During the last 10 years, we offered small wheeled bins with lids for recycling, but we didn't make those bins mandatory. Prior to that, the old style bins were just your, kind of like a laundry basket of sorts. And my experience is that a lot of folks throw things in there night before, next morning comes, it's a windy day, and half of the stuff is, piled up against your shrubs or, underneath your truck when you're on the way to work. And that's led to a lot of litter. So based on what the current trends are, I'm proposing that we solicit bids for solid waste, compost, and recycling, with the recycling being carts only, so that we eliminate these baskets. Now, personally, my basket slides right underneath my Duratub. I put it in there, I've got 2 of them, I put the soft stuff, light stuff in the bottom, so I don't really want a cart, but I think township-wide, it would improve our service, and I think it would reduce some of the litter.
On windy days, you see a lot of stuff, especially by the water, blowing into the water. It's
Yeah,
really-
I agree. And I don't think I think recycling is one of those things that people, as they're doing it, they think they're doing something good, but when that trash ends up in the water, well, you'd have better to just throw it in your trash, So I feel like saying, if we're gonna go out for bid, we kind of have to have a standard thing, like this is what we want people to bid on. And I feel like switching to recycling carts is one of those things, it's a change. Not everybody's gonna embrace it. Some folks are gonna say, I like this current system, but I don't think we're asking people to go too far out of their comfort zone.
It's a good change, Ken. They're
I
a
think
lot
so.
larger, too.
Yeah.
You can put a lot more stuff in them.
Well, and the thing is, and one of the things, I had this conversation with Stephanie in my office, and as, deputy supervisor, she fields a lot of these calls. And one of the selling factors to get someone to switch over is, it's a pretty good sized cart, even though it's a little smaller. You don't have to put it out every week. Instead of filling up this little basket, usually recycling isn't, you wash it out, it's not gonna get too smelly. Leave it go for a couple, 3 weeks, and then roll it out when it gets a little fuller. So
And those the mid-sized boxes, you can sometimes I'm not gonna break that one down.
well, yeah,
Right into the bin.
yeah, don't say that out loud.
One
It
thing-
gets crushed.
Yeah, one thing, I don't know if it has to be part of an RFP, but, one thing I'd like to see is some type of program that we can air on cable or on YouTube that talks about recycling, about-
Education.
Exactly, just like, plastic grocery bags, really, those are not supposed to go into the recycle. Many people still put them in the recycle, and they really cause a lot of grief and extra costs. So I think that education, that programming, I think is essential, so I don't know if that needs to be part of it, that they
I
need
think
to provide that?
the
or-
state has a program
Okay,
for Eagle with PSAs that maybe.
so just something to keep in mind.
So here's my thought on this. And this is just designing an RFQ in general. So let's say this. First and foremost, I agree with you 100%. We toured the facility where they do this recycling, where it's automated. The things we saw coming through that recycling system were amazing. And we learned I don't think a lot of people understand what's the most valuable part of that waste stream and what's the least valuable. So there's definitely room for education, and I don't think I've ever interacted with a waste hauler without saying, please help us educate our residents. Having said that, I feel like the way to write an RFQ, and I had some conversations with our current provider and some recent bids that they've been a part of, and what does that bidding process look like if you're a waste hauler? So I feel like the more strings and demands that I put in that RFQ, I'm kind of driving up the price.
And that's
right?
fine. I just want to sort of, everybody to think about that.
I agree with you. I think what we do is we choose a waste hauler, and then once we have a waste hauler, we say, hey,
Then we
you
can
need to
say
help us
this
with
is what we
education,
need.
right?
I will say on my can, there's actually a large sticker on top of it that shows what goes in the recycling bin and what doesn't go in the
Right.
recycling bin.
Right.
So it shows they don't want, they have wire hangers, they don't want to have certain plastic bags in there.
Yep.
So I mean, it's right on top.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
read it, I mean, at least it gives you a little more information than just a big garbage bin. Let's keep it.
One of the items I learned that was actually a nuisance in the recycling system is your traditional blueberry or strawberry clamshell clear plastic. Yeah, I mean, it weighs nothing. It's not saving the environment, but it completely jams up the process. So you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm gonna rinse this out and I feel good about the environment, but if recycling, the goal, recycling does not save money. It is more costly based on the way the recycling process works than what we do. But we're saving things from going into the waste stream. So a lot of education that could be had. But again, I feel like that's
Yeah,
phase
absolutely.
two. Right
Again,
now,
just-
we just want to say, listen,
I
tell
agree.
us,
I agree. I
give us our best price.
I have a question. If you could refresh my memory. As far as a hardship board is concerned, did the current vendor come up with a figure that they use for the hardship board, or was that something that was
It was in the bid
generated
spec.
and was in all of the bid specs?
In
Okay,
the bid
so,
spec. Yep.
so we probably should look at that. Maybe, I don't know if it needs to be increased.
Yeah, it's
because
been
we've never-
$3,000 a year for 15 years. I
Right.
really don't think it's the feature that scares our waste hauler.
Right. And I don't think, and the reason why I think that we should look at increasing is, the prices are gonna increase, so we may as well increase that too.
Sure.
And the one thing that I noticed in the last couple of years is we're starting to see more, a trend of more like 90-year-old plus people. So what I would like to do is say, hey, if you live in the township and you're 90, your waste hauling is free.
What about when I was a single guy and I didn't
Not
generate any
90.
trash?
Well, so
I-
let's say
I-
this,
I feel like
two
they'll take slippery
things,
slopes.
two things
You're
from
not
a
90.
bid perspective. Our last two bids were in 2010 and 2015, and we asked voluntarily, will you participate in our
Right.
waste hauler hardship program at a cost of this much? So I don't see any problem with increasing that number.
Right.
Phase two of that is really kind of up to the waste hauler hardship board to decide what triggers relief, right? So this board, it's an independent body of 3 citizens to say, we'll grant or we won't grant relief. So again, that's one of those things, you having served on it for many years, you have an ownership. I just come to them and say, will you kick in 10 grand, right? Hey, this is going up. We want to make sure we cast as wide of a net as possible to give relief to those who really need it. I don't think there's anybody bidding on a multi-million-dollar 5-year contract saying we won't give you 10 grand a year.
Right.
Right? So, in increasing it, definitely good idea.
Okay.
The other thing, and this is one of those things where, maybe for lack of a better word, I'm asking for us, for this board, to give the attorney and myself, the ability, or the 3 full-time officials, I think indicated here, to be nimble, right? So, I can tell you, I have had contacts, I met with Priority Waste multiple times prior to this. I've had a conversation with Tringali, which was our prior hauler, and at least verbally, they expressed an interest in bidding. And I feel like Tringali's service was very good for the 5 years we had him. I recently received email correspondence from Waste Management, also expressing an interest to meet with the board, with somebody, to talk about waste hauling. Waste Management does run the solid waste landfill up in Lenox Township. We're right off of 94, so I think we're pretty well positioned as a potential customer for Waste Management. because they shoot right up to their own landfill. I may have said this before, I don't recall, so I apologize if I'm redundant, but the size of our township and just the geographics of our township, it's a 5-day-a-week service. So from a waste hauler's perspective, if you add a small village and you can pick up the whole village in one day, you got to figure out what the heck to do with these employees for 4 other days of the week. You can pretty much assign the employees you need to Harrison Township, and they do a route Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's a clean thing. So to add us as a municipality, we're kind of right-sized, so that's good news. So at least at this point, I've talked to 3 companies that are interested in bidding. You never know what happens when the time comes. But for that reason, because they have talked to me, I'm also recommending that we request some alternates. So I don't know what the cool thing is in waste hauling, but let this company, like, well, we're doing this program and we offer this service for this additional thing. So I kind of want, here's our standard, 3 services, manual load, recycling in the bins. This is our standard, maybe, this is our waste hauler hardship contribution. And then alternates, say, hey, we'll save you $1.50 if you do this, or we'll give you this service for an extra 75 cents. I don't know what that is, but I feel like offering the service providers that chance to, come up with that, I feel is important. So I'm proposing that this board authorize the 3 full-time officials to work with the attorney to prepare a bid specification, solicit bids for waste hauling services for a 5-year period, so 5-year contract. Historically, they typically say, would you be willing to give us a 5-year extension? 10 years ago, that really worked out in our favor, because in 2020, they gave us 5 more years. They didn't know inflation was coming, and we made it. We made out on the deal. If we get to 5 years from now, and it's not worth renewing, we can always say no, but asking them for an extension, to put in front, I feel like is okay for us. So I'm gonna look to the attorney. I don't want to violate any Open Meetings Act, requirements. I have no problem sending out, say, hey, this is our draft bid spec, sort of a thing. But realistically, in order to make sure that we have enough time to solicit bids, choose a provider, and that provider has to have enough time to be able to implement, the new service by May 1st. I guess I'm trying to avoid coming back to this board with that bid spec, but kind of, empower the 3 full-timers to work with the attorney to do that. But
And I don't think it stops if somebody looks at it and goes, we need to talk about this.
Correct.
We can always have a meeting.
you can always have a meeting, right? We don't have to, we're limited to engage in saying, well, I want to add this and I want to add that, and deliberate via email. But realistically, the request before you is to give us the opportunity to have enough time to get bids without condensing it too much, and bring back a recommendation to the board. And really, at that time, let's just say hypothetically, 3 providers bid on this. If we're gonna put something on the, March agenda to talk about this, we're likely to see those bidders here, and we're gonna hear from them before we're gonna take any action.
And I also think, in my experience, the bid specs are, we're saying we're gonna work with the attorney, but that just means he's gonna read 12 other people's bid specs and say like, yep, this is the one to use, and we're gonna put our name where somebody else's is.
Right, so.
Can I just make one request? After our conversation at the last meeting, we were talking about manual and mechanical loading, and I specifically drove around the township and looked at garbages and garbage days, and I definitely think it has to be manual.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be feasible to do mechanical loading. There's so much stuff that people put just off to the side of their bins and on other bags. I just think that's just the bare necessity of what we have to have.
So,
I mean,
so after having conversation, like point counterpoint.
Right.
So first, I agree with you. I am not prepared to say we have to go to automated load. I feel like that's a change, and we're probably potentially looking at changes. Using the recycle bin is a small change, and I think that's an easier change to make. The flip side of what you just said, though, is based on my conversations with other municipalities and our current service provider, if you say, listen, it has to be this way. So what they do is there's two models that they've had so far. One is it's gotta be in a bin, and if you're a large family and you have two bins, you have two bins, but it's gotta be in a bin. The other option is that you have a bin and like so many opportunities to do, right? Like, my point is when I was a kid, you put a bag of trash out in the street. Nobody had a wheeled dumpster. Now we have wheeled dumpsters. I feel like sometime in the future, we can probably talk about that automated load, and enough people will accept that. But I agree that right now, I'm not ready to make it a part of this mandatory.
I was gonna say, if you think you have complaints to the supervisor's office right now, wait till they have
Correct.
a bunch of garbage sitting on
Right.
on the street because,
Yeah.
you know, it's a big.
Somebody cuts our bill in half, we might go like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, we can deal with the phone calls.
And what I saw was it was about a buck a month, maybe $2 a month, right? And I feel like the average resident is gonna say for 20-some bucks a year, I wanna be able to put an extra pile of crap next to the trash
Yeah.
if that's what I need.
That was just an observation.
Oh, no, I agree, I
Especially
agree.
after-
But I feel like there'll be a day in the not-too-distant future where somebody sitting at this table will make that next change. I feel like waste hauling is gonna evolve to that.
I agree.
And, I mean, the notion
Not
of
yet.
putting a can out and have them, hydraulic device dumping, when I was a kid, that was space age, right?
Yeah.
So,
I know through like waste management, I can call and they can show me my dumpster being dumped. They have cameras in the back of the.
Correct.
My dumpster being dumped into so that's how they find people that are dumping bodies and things along that line. They review the footage.
Yeah.
The police, I mean, and you
I've
can-
stopped dumping all my bodies in my trash, yeah.
But it's
because
just,
of that.
it's just amazing how much the technology is improved.
Yeah, and that is one of, I think one of the areas where priority waste is leading, but to your point, yeah, there's even at that waste level, there's data being collected, so it's amazing. So, based on all that, really, bottom line, we're asking this board to authorize the 3 full-time officials, work with the attorney, prepare a bid specification, solicit bids for our waste hauling services. We're a 5-year period with a recommendation to come back at a future meeting. I didn't include in this some of the other things regarding but I tried in the background to say we're gonna ask for the recycle bins on wheels. We'll probably ask for a 5-year extension. I like the idea of increasing the hardship commitment, because I don't really think that, going from 3,000, say, to 10,000 a year, I just don't think that's gonna move the needle for that hauler. That's just
Probably not.
a token thing. And I don't think we've ever spent the 3,000 as it currently is.
Well, we may
Yeah,
see more of that with inflation the way it's been, and a lot of people are living longer.
sure. Fixed
You're
incomes, yeah.
90 years old,
Yep.
you're really having a tough time paying your bills.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All right, so that's my proposal. Any discussion, any further discussion, or is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right. Got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mrs. Brown. We had a fair amount of discussion.
Just a question. The RFQ or whatever we're going to put out is going to have a penalty clause in it?
Our current one does.
Yes. Yeah,
So-
I see a scenario where we would generally mimic what the current, like, I'm gonna look to the attorney to say, what do you see in these current contracts? I believe, and I'm, don't wanna go out too far, but I believe Shelby Township has bids due in January. So they've got what I perceive to be fresh language, and we do share attorneys with them, so, that, just going out on a limb, but that could be the starting point, right? But
Yeah,
to your point, yeah, there's some sort of protection.
Well, yeah, I know that we have that, but maybe look at that really good, just as that could be a deterrent for people bidding this, like, hey, we have truck problems, we have 12 inches of snow, all of a sudden I'm getting pinged for 25. So maybe there's some language that we can change, and maybe they look at it a little bit differently.
Well, and it's worth noting that this kind of swings both ways. If I create a bid spec that is incredibly restrictive, or, I get to buy your company for $1 if you miss a day kind of a thing, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot.
That's my point.
Right, but the flip side of that is, it was this spring, and I might have still been GFL. It was all the same people. So I don't know if it was pre-GFL to Priority Waste, but we had a pretty strong windstorm, I wanna say like on a Tuesday of our chipping.
It was this election
August?
in
May.
May.
Okay, so May of this year, It was the Tuesday election day, right? It was a school board election.
Yep.
Right, primarily. Got hammered with wind, tons of stuff down, which meant that the people who had their chipping on Wednesday, they didn't have their chipping out in time. If you really were lucky and you hit Thursday or Friday and you had time after work, but the bottom line is come that weekend, there was a ton of chipping out. And at the time, it was GFL was our provider. It was the same human beings, the same vehicles, but they continued to provide chipping services that second week because they recognize, right? So, we do have a working these are, trusted suppliers. You know these people by name. We talked about, hey, if you need some additional compensation, they did it at no additional cost. So there is a relationship that you build over time. But for sure, we want to make sure that we've got language that reflects what the most recent bids are to make sure that there's some protection.
Okay, and then as far as coming back with a recommendation, are we able to see those when they come back in, all the proposals?
Sure, yeah.
I would ask that.
Yeah, historically, if we go back to 15, and I can't remember, so I apologize if you were on the board in 15 or you came in 16.
16.
Yeah. It's a big old board packet when that
Okay.
time comes, and there's a lot of information there.
We
20
try and condense it to like a table, because really, everyone's bidding on the same thing, so you put
Yeah, you're gonna have
the
a summary.
price up at the front.
But
of
there,
all
but-
of them.
yeah, but there, all those things, there was a written document, actually, back from 2015, that Rizzo submitted, and it had language saying, if you need this, we commit to this, we commit to do that, and through the years and through the different changes of ownership, we've had to refer to that, saying, this is the contract you inherited when you bought, this is what the prior hauler committed to, and so, yeah, absolutely. This isn't no reason to, and it's as much of putting it in the board packet so that you guys can see it, as well as the residents who are, gonna be a part of paying for those fees.
I still remember who the highest, the middle, and the lowest was.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, Tringali did a great job, and, the family was, very cool, and, if it was close, I think we could have stayed, but it was 20% less at that time with a lot of additional services, and that made it very difficult for us to continue that relationship with Tringali, so. All right, a lot of discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mrs. Brown to authorize the 3 full-time officials to work with the attorney to prepare a bid specification and solicit bids for waste hauling services for a 5-year period with a recommendation to come back at a future meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. All right, last agenda item before public comment, item G8, regarding MPSC order. Board members, Public Act 233 of 2023 took local control away from municipalities and empowered the state to make decisions regarding the location of wind and solar energy facilities. PA 233 also required the Michigan Public Service Commission to issue an order to implement various parts of PA 233. We believe that the order issued by the MPSC is unlawful and overreaching. In your board packet is a resolution to support local control and the claim of appeal against the MPSC decision. I recommend the adoption of the attached resolution.
Motion to adopt the resolution as presented.
Is there support?
Support.
All right. This is just another example of the state taking away local control. And so we're not necessarily a primary site for wind and solar, but, they may try to take away local control on marinas tomorrow, and I hope that our brothers and sisters in neighboring townships across the state support us, and so I believe it's important for us to support them with this resolution. Discussion. Hearing none,
Didn't they talk about putting windmills in the water?
Long time ago, when Tony was our supervisor, he
Yeah.
said, hey, could we do this? And, you can do anything, but we haven't seen that come to fruition in other parts of the state. So at this point, I don't know that that's bound to happen. But again, if we want to, let us talk about it. I don't want the state coming in saying, we're gonna line the shores of Lake St. Clair with wind facilities if it's just not practical, so. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Backens?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Tominelli?
Yes.
Mr. Verkowski?
Yes. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is item H, public comments. We'll open up the floor for public comment. They can be about any subject you wish. We ask that you try to limit those comments to 5 minutes or less.
C. William Bardell, 28-year resident, clean-cut, do-gooder boy next door, clean up, fix up, people helping people. Want to remind everyone, please check out Save Lake St. Clair Facebook, follow it, and stay up to date on everything that's going on. And I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Any board comments?
Just two real quick things. Maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't.
I'll make it up.
Harson's Island lost water.
Yes.
We have water mains under the Clinton River.
Yes, sir.
Would our township be separated? Is there two feeds? Is that?
Everything,
are we
any
protected?
any river crossing is redundant. So the answer to your question is, should we have a problem with an underwater crossing? Number one, we can isolate that, so we're not losing water. And number two, there would be a change in how the water flows, right? So folks don't always understand that, you know, the system is kind of happy the way it is. When you change things and it was flowing this way and it flows that way, every once in a while, we'll see some discoloration
Yep.
of the water.
Yep.
It not necessarily harmful in a health perspective, but it could lead to some discoloration of the water, which makes people uncomfortable. I am not aware of any crossing that is singular. So, for example, we have a water main that runs down North River Road, water main that runs down South River Road. So it services the very end. But just at that very end, there's a crossing from North to South River Road. I know that because we went through a bunch of trouble when we wanted to put a seawall in and we had to figure out where it was and we didn't want to drive a sheet pile right through our water main. So I lived that for 6 months or so. But the point is that should something like that happen, there's still that initial feed down North River and down South River.
Okay.
So let's say there are dead ends. It's challenging to provide looped systems in Harrison Township because we're a peninsula. The majority of us is an island. We're, a lot of dead ends. There's somewhere in the township where there's a worst-case scenario for a water main break where there could be a tip, the end of a street, something like that that's isolated, and there's really no place to loop it.
Yeah.
But for the Clinton River, we have a water main runs all the way down and a crossing from like the second house to roughly Venetian Point or the DNR site.
And we could shut off every crossing underneath the river
And still-
because we have we have a tap on the north side and a tap south.
Correct.
It made me think when I
Oh, yeah,
saw
for
those
sure.
people are
Yeah.
carrying bottles of water in
Yeah,
right now.
and,
so.
and the challenge they have is really the only way they could have redundancy is to have two crossings, because they can't loop on the other side.
Right.
So the solution there, it's just like gosh, when was that? It was '04 to '08 when we lost our main feed over by,
the
16
expressway.
and, 16 and 94. But since then, we have two connections to GLWA. If we have to switch to the north feed, it really hurts some of the pressures at the south end of the township. But, yeah, we have more redundancy in our system than we ever have, and we are not vulnerable to river crossings.
Okay, that was the first issue, then, I'm sure that we're all aware of this, we've talked about this several times, is I saw an article about what Clinton Township's offering their firefighters. And I'm just saying for hiring new hires.
Okay.
So, I know now why we're
Are you talking about the sheriff's office, or are you talking about?
firefighters.
I must have missed what.
2.8 multiplier, retiree healthcare, all the stuff so all I'm saying is, we all know that they're struggling to get new firefighters in.
Sure.
And our border township to our west and south, whatever direction
Yeah,
it
to the
is,
west.
They're competing, and probably if, everybody's looking at the same type of style job.
Sure.
We had civil service last week, Mr. Backens, and so we have Mr. Duncan, who was the previous fire chief from Clinton Township there, and our fire chief as well, we have 0 vacancies, Clinton Township has 6. So beyond, and the conversation is beyond the financial rewards, which are part of the reason everyone shows up to work, is the culture. And that's something that, the chief on down through 1737 has created to make it an attractive place to start your job and have a career.
Yeah, so to that point, within our history, I could point to one individual we lost because Clinton Township offers retiree health care. It's important to note that we do offer an alternative to retiree health care. So we're not offering nothing in that. I hate the double negative, meaning we are giving some other incentive
Yeah.
that helps to fund.
I'm
retiree
certainly
healthcare,
not
right?
looking to renegotiate.
No, for
I
sure.
just, I saw it on a couple social media platforms, and, yeah, and I know that right now we're sitting at a good number, but we've got a few people that are on the cusp of possibly retiring, so if we find difficulties, that's probably why. So,
Yeah,
I know you're all,
It's ongoing. I spent time in the last 2 weeks talking about and meeting with county and local representatives regarding the upcoming, the new sheriff's contract. So Macomb County Sheriff's Office recently made the decision to open up their pension system. And for some people, there was some angst associated with it. But again, if a majority of the other communities that you're competing against are offering a pension and you don't, you're kind of limiting yourself to a pool of employees. I feel like with the county offering that pension system, it does make them more competitive. The normal cost, as they looked at it, is a few percentage points. They did indicate, and I do believe we're going to see probably the potential for some revised contracts, future conversation. But I believe in year 1 of the contracts we recently executed, they had anticipated a 3% escalation in the wage. This most recent agreement has a 5%, so we may be seeing some altered contracts. I haven't seen anything, so I can't report that, but based on the conversations, and we'll see how our peers react, because all those are aligned. So,
Sure.
Is there kickback resistance? I don't know. I don't control that. I know that even if we end up paying 2% more for the 15 and a half police officers that we pay for, probably still not the tipping point to start our own police department. And
Right.
And me personally, as just one member of this board, I'm gonna trust the sheriff and his staff to negotiate the appropriate things they need to recruit and retain officers. I'm not about to become a police chief, so, but.
fire chief
but yeah,
was enough.
Fire chief was okay,
Great.
police chief, no.
Yeah, I can do the fire.
That's the line.
No problem, yeah, I don't need a gun, so. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Motion by Mr. Batkins with support by Mr. Tominello, I heard. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.